Here's a joke for you all. What's got 2 hands and 2 feet but no arms or legs? Plok. Okay, maybe you didn't find that funny, but you might get a couple of chuckles out of this Super Nintendo cult classic. Released in 1993-94 in Europe, players were introduced to a torso with a serious attitude. In this action platforming game, players take control of Plok as he sets out on a quest to reclaim his stolen flag and then shortly after, defend his island from various invaders. Players are treated to colorful graphics, a wide array of power-ups, costumes, and interesting mechanics as they traverse the land of Polyesta. One of the most intriguing things about Plok is his defense system. Plok literally throws punches and kicks at anyone and anything that's in his way. The only problem is sometimes they take a little longer to come back. After cooking the concept for a while and waiting on a new opportunity, Steve and John Pickford finally had their chance to get the head of Software Creations on board, and the vision of Plok would finally be realized. You may recognize this duo as they worked on a lot of successful titles, including Ghosts and Goblins, Spider-Man and the X-Men in Arcade's Revenge, and Spider-Man and Venom Maximum Carnage. These brothers were cult classic magnets. Speaking of brothers, another famous sibling group was also involved in the development of this game. Tim, Jeff, and Mike Follin, or the Follin brothers, are widely regarded as the most innovative composers for early video game music. The soundtrack contains an eclectic mix of progressive rock, campy tunes, and really creepy tracks as well. Despite being a very solid game and rated highly by reviewers, Plok remains one of the hidden gems of the Super Nintendo library. I would highly recommend you give it a try if you ever have the opportunity to. We will be looking at Tim Follin's beach theme as we talk about dealing with time changes in today's episode of Stick to Games. Hey everybody, Kenny Jr. here and welcome back to Stick to Games. In today's episode, we'll have yet another conversation on odd time signatures as well as a focus on time signature changes. And to do this, we will be using a Tim Follin original composition. I know what you're thinking, how could it have taken you so long to cover Tim Follin? A lot of Follin's music tends to nod towards the direction of progressive rock music. To give a brief overview of progressive rock, it's known to be developed in the UK in around the 60s, and it essentially takes on the tropes of classical music but with varied instrumentation. The thing that might stick out is its typically longer form, its direct avoidance of pop music trends, and it freely fuses ideas from other genres into something that might be considered a modern-day concerto. So in this unusual form, odd time signatures and frequent time changes are not uncommon at all. So we're going to prepare to go over some cool grooves and licks that work within this context. So if you're ready to check it out, let's take it to the set. We start off in the 7/8 time signature. So there's an 8 on the bottom, but no need to panic because we've seen this before, right? We know that this means we're using eighth notes to count by ones instead of the typical quarter note. But this time the 7 is up top. Now that's different. So this means we're going to have to count 7 eighth notes, and that equals one measure. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Just counting it takes you a little bit off balance, right? It's like the groove doesn't want to be centered anywhere. So now on top of that, we're going to open up with 16th notes here. So what does that mean? You'll treat it like anything else. If your 8th notes are the 1, your 16th notes are the and that's all there is to it. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 5 and 6 and 7 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 5 and 6 and 7 and. Now the good news here is we can ease into this arrangement because all of this is on our hi-hat. We just have to hit a few open hi-hats is all. You'll hit them on the 1, the 3, the 5, plus the and of 6, being sure to close right after on all of them. We'll do this for quite a bit, so you'll have time to get used to the unbalanced feeling. So now I've got some good news. After that, we get more practice with this signature as we simply move the open hi-hat down to the snare instead. Now here comes an interesting part. we want to make a quick little transition, but it's in 15/16. It's just a final repeat of the last section, even though it might look intimidating. The 16 is the bottom number, so now that means our 16th notes are being counted by ones. So we just simply count all the way up to 15. A little trick I use is to count to 6 twice and then count to 3. Simple maths. Then I kick on the 3 and immediately go into the next part. And then after that harrying odd time experience, that brings us to our primary pattern. We have an interesting 16 beat that makes a linear pattern out of the hi-hat and the kick with a snare backbeat. Our lesson in 16th note permutations has taught us to be pretty good at reading these, but here's a silly little sentence I made up to help memorize the hi-hat pattern, and we'll be playing it for a while. Apple and a apple and a delicious shiny apple and a apple and a apple and a delicious shiny apple. Now, the tricky part is to essentially play a kick drum in all of those gaps, excluding the backbeat and the E of 1. This kick part has a lot of syncopation, and the kick doesn't even play on the downbeat at all again for this part. Once again, taking away that feeling of having a center. Now let's go ahead and try to put them all together, and let's go ahead and try to sneak that snare drum on the backbeat. So we're going to be playing this through the second melody and a horn ditty, and we'll wrap it up just before a little bass break where we can make a callback to the first section, but it's slightly different now that it's in common time. This next section is a repeat of the first common time section, but just played with a half-open hi-hat the entire time. We're going to hear a guitar solo in this section, and we'll play for, about another 8 bars before this next section, which cues from the guitar for some ensemble stabs. We're going to hit these cues again, but in between, we'll play this funky 8-beat groove in which finally the kick lands on a downbeat, and we won't be able to help but bob our heads at this point. I'm going to demonstrate another little kick drum part that I like to play here. It's a little variation based on the same idea, but does a little bit more to emphasize what the bass guitar does. Now after that, the guitar is going to continue using that same lick, but all the other instruments are going to go empty. For drummers, that means no drums, just cymbals for the lick and 8th note hi-hats for the time. Now, for me, again, from an arrangement standpoint, I actually like using a 16-beat filler with accents on the downbeats, and I skip the second cue. It makes it a little bit more dramatic and helps it build a little bit more naturally, especially if you use a production technique of putting a filter on the drums to kind of do an EQ sweep. I think it'll help to add a lot more drama to this build-up. The direction of the track here is to get smaller and smaller and smaller until the next section kicks in loudly with yet another 7/8 time section. This one is not so easy like the first section of the song, but it's not too bad. For the first measure, you'll see a kick on the 1, the snare on the 5, and tom 2 on the and of 6. The second starts off just like the first, but ends with tom 2 and 3 on the 6 and 7 respectively. Then, the repeated pattern comes in with a kick on 1, 5, upbeat of 6 and 7, snare on 3, and then the 6, and then tom 2 on the upbeat of 6. You'll notice the hi-hat on the bottom of the staff. While this typically means played with the foot, I'll actually be exercising my open hand drumming here and play the part with my left hand instead. All this coupled together makes for a really cool sounding jungle beat in this 7/8 time signature. Now, as for our playback, for the first time on this show, I'm going to use a completed personal arrangement spliced together with the help of some great musicians. So together we're going to put on a serious jam here, so if you're ready, let's take it from the top. And alright everybody, that just about covers everything we had to talk about today. If you enjoyed this video, please remember to hit that like button and also subscribe so you can see my future videos. Remember to hit me up on social media, Instagram or Twitter, if you want to make a special request for a video or if you just want to drop by and say hi. Also be sure to check out my website where you can find these transcriptions as well as other content that I produce. I hope you enjoyed everything today and I hope to see you again soon. Till next time.